Okay. If you've got your Bibles, you're going to need it today. We will be in the book of Genesis, but it will be easier for you if you have that. But I just want to start by telling you that just a little while ago, I watched a series on Netflix, and it was called Sunderland Till I Die. It was about a British football team and the town behind it, the town of Sunderland and the team Sunderland. And over this 2-year period that this documentary series had been filmed, it was a real downtime for the club, and they slid from one league into another, and then they were seriously struggling to not be relegated again into a level further down. And the townspeople were incredibly loyal to their football team. And they all had opinions as to, who should be dropped, who was playing well, what the manager should do, etc. And they sang songs at the top of their lungs in the football stadium. And some of the lyrics were amazing. And the series was named Sunderland Till I Die because it was a song that they sang. And it says, the words go, I'm Sunderland till I die. I'm Sunderland till I die. I know I am, I'm sure I am, I'm Sunderland till I die. If only I could sing, I would sing it for you, but I will spare you that. Another one of these songs was, and it's Sunderland, we're by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. But sometimes their team would be losing, and they would still sing these songs. And then, if the team lost, and the team would be walking back in under the grandstands and into their rooms, and the people would be singing to them, walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and blown, walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. It was an inspiring series. I love sport, so I loved it. But there were some things in there that when I've been reading through Genesis, and there were some things that I could see that were a parallel there. For the Sunderland team, at one point, after a humiliating loss, they interviewed one person, and I wish I could do the British accent really well. Please, for all those who are British, I'm going to ask for forgiveness in advance. Please, I'm sorry if I've butchered your accent, but this person said, after humiliating loss, they faced the camera and they said, I just hate it that we're getting beat every week, but I'm here, aren't I? And I want to talk today about God being here for us, through the wins and the losses, through the ups and the downs, through the celebrations and the mournings. And if you feel like you're getting beat up every week, you need to know that God is here. God is here. And He is with you. And to do that, we're going to have a look in Genesis, in 2 chapters in Genesis. Genesis chapter 21 and chapter 22. So if you've got your Bible with you, now's a good time to go and find those 2 chapters. We will flick backwards and forwards between the two. Initially, these 2 chapters, I didn't really see them as connected. I've since I was a little girl, I've been brought up on Bible stories, and I didn't see the connection between these 2 stories until maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just thought that Genesis 21, oh yeah, that's the story of Hagar when she's running away for the second time, and she goes into the desert. That's that story, okay? And Genesis 22, yeah, that's the story of Abraham when he was asked to offer up his son Isaac. So it's that story. I hadn't seen the connection between the 2. But actually, these 2 stories are beside each other in the Bible for a reason. There's actually 13 years between them, but they are beside each other. And they're parallel stories, and they have got a lot to teach us. So we're going to dig around a little bit, and we're going to find the truth in there, the nugget of truth in there that we can apply to our lives. I just want to say, sort of in brackets here, I want to say that there's some great resources online, and now that we're in this time of lockdown, there is a lot online that we can find to feed our souls. And for me, one of those resources is a website called Bema, B-E-M-A, bemadiscipleship.com. And this is where some of the material for this sermon has come from. And in that podcast, there's a Jewish man named Marty Solomon. And he talks about the lullaby effect, which is where we read the Bible, we know the end of the story, so we don't actually engage in the story to find out what is there for us. We don't fully appreciate the Eastern worldview that the Bible was written from. And that's true for me. It's not on purpose, but by default, when I read the Bible, I make it fit my world. I run it through my filters. And we all have filters. I have my Western worldview, and I have my brethren upbringing filter as well, that affects how I read the Bible. And it's not until we actually stop and put those aside and look at the text and what is there and what is God saying and where did this come from, that we actually find gems that are there for us. Okay, let's look. We're going to start by looking in Genesis chapter 21. But first, a little bit of background. Hagar had a son with Abraham, and his name is Ishmael. Ishmael is now 13 years old, and Ishmael has a surprise younger brother called Isaac. And he teases his younger brother, which most brothers who are 13 years apart would tend to do. But the rivalry between the two mothers is really intense. There's not the rivalry between the two brothers. It's the rivalry between the two mothers that is the problem. And Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, Hagar and her son are sent away to the desert with a skin of water. Basically, she and her son have been sent away to die. So with that background, here are the key elements in this story. We're going to start at verse 14. The story starts in verse 14 where it says, early the next morning, Abraham set supplies, second point, Abraham set supplies on Hagar's shoulders. And they sent them off into the desert. The water runs out, and Hagar, third point, Hagar puts the boy under a bush. Early in the morning, Abraham set supplies on Hagar's shoulders, and she, Hagar, in the desert, set the boy under a bush. God hears Ishmael's cries, which I find really interesting, because Hagar was crying, but God heard Ishmael's cries. And Hagar looks up, fourth point, Hagar looks up and sees a well. And finally, this story ends with a promise about Ishmael's future. Okay, did you get those? Early in the morning, Abraham set supplies on Hagar's shoulders. Hagar put the boy under a bush. She looked up and saw a well, and the story ends with a promise. Okay, let's flick over to Genesis 22 and a little bit of background here. Abraham has a son called Isaac, and he is the much loved son of Abraham and Sarah. Isaac has been raised for the majority of his life as an only child, and he's been told many times about the promises of God that are on his life, about the blessing that is over his life, and he knows he is a special child. Right now, though, Abraham has been asked by God to go to Mount Moriah and offer his son Isaac on an altar to God. Now, this was something that was required by a lot of the other religions that were in that area. All of them offered child sacrifice. But Abraham, this request of God had him wondering what on earth was going on. So let's get into Abraham's story. We're going to start at verse 3. Early the morning, recognise that? Early the next morning, Abraham gets up and he sets supplies on Isaac's shoulders. And they set off for a half-day journey that took them 3 days. I suspect Abraham went the long way to give God time to change his mind. But they eventually arrive at Mount Moriah, and Abraham puts the boy on the wood, or the bush, or the brush. Okay? At the crunch time, Abraham lifts up his eyes and sees a ram caught in the thicket. And the story ends with a covenant between God and Abraham, and it's about Isaac's future. Early the next morning, Abraham put supplies on Isaac's shoulders. He put him on top of the wood. He looked up and saw a ram, and it ends with a covenant. Those 5 things are in the Hagar story as well. And I'm sure that they are there for a reason. So let's just dig a little bit. Let's look at these 2 stories in parallel. Let's play the same but different game. Let's see what's the same and see what's different. Both of them are stories about sons of Abraham. Same. In both stories, God provides what is needed at the time. For Hagar, she needed water, and God provided that. She didn't need a ram. She needed water, and God provided it. Abraham didn't need water. He needed a ram. He needed a substitute for his son on the offering, and God provided what he needed. In both these stories, they were provided with what they needed to save them. And both stories end with a covenant being made between God and the parent and the son. So Abraham, he is the patriarch and the father of the Israelite nation, and as such, he is a model to the people of who God is for them. And who they see Abraham to be is who they see God to be. So while Abraham said it, there are things here that God also says. So Abraham offered up his son. God also offered up his son, his only son. God also provides us with what we need when we need it. He is Jehovah Jireh, after all. God also has made a covenant with us, and he made many covenants with the Israelite nation. But he's made a covenant with us, and that we are reminded of that covenant every time we take communion. Because Jesus said, this blood is my covenant with you. This covenant that he made for us was made with his blood. And there is a reminder of that here for us also. But it is what is different in these stories that has fascinated me. The difference in the English translation is 3 words. And it's in chapter 22. And you'll find it first in verse 3. And the 3 words are, here I am. And in Hebrew, it's interesting that this is actually only one word. One Hebrew word for here I am. And that word is hine. The word in Hebrew doesn't just mean, here I am. Or yes, I'm over here. But it's a declaration that I am present. I am totally present to you. One biblical scholar pointed out that this word, hine, has sort of a force behind it that is like, at your service. That's what is behind this one word. And we find in chapter 22 that Abraham said this one word 3 times. It's never mentioned in the Hagar story. And it's one more thing that Abraham says that God also says. Because God says to us, I am here, I am with you, I am totally present for you. I will never leave you alone, I am here. So let's look at this one word just a little bit deeper. And look at the 3 times that Abraham said this. So the first time that we hear the word Hine is in verse 1. And God calls to Abraham, and Abraham responds with Hine, here I am, totally present to you. Abraham didn't know what God wanted, but he was saying to God, I'm available. That's what he was saying with here I am. I'm available, God. Little did he know the test that was coming. And that's the same for all of us. We said yes to God at some point in our lives. We might have thought we knew what our life was going to be, but as the years moved along, things changed. So I'm asking you, are you still saying to God, here I am, God, totally present to you? Whatever it is that you are calling me to do, my answer, God, is Hine, here I am, totally present to you. The second time that we see this word is in verse 7. And this time, Isaac and Abraham are walking, and Isaac interrupts Abraham on the journey, and he questions him about one major supply item that Isaac can see is missing. He says, we've got the wood, we've got the fire, where is the sacrifice? But when Isaac interrupts Abraham and he says to him, Father, Abraham responds to Isaac with Hine, here I am, son, here I am totally present to you. This time, Abraham's Hine comes from a place of love. The first time he was saying to God, I'm available. This time, it's coming from a place of love for his son. Abraham might have been thinking in his mind, I know it's dangerous, and if God does not give me new instructions, this is not going to end well. Yet Abraham says to his son, I am here for you, son. I am not going anywhere. I am totally present and I am here for you. When we have people around us who are going through a tough time and they call to us for help, we need to be able to say, I know it's a tough time for you right now, but I am here for you. Here I am. I'm totally present for you. So the third time that we see this word, Abraham has ascended up the mountain just as God instructed him to, and he has bound his son Isaac, and the one that he loves, and he's put him on the altar, piled high with wood. And this is a very different place. A place where Abraham knows in his heart, this is real. This is pretty much crazy. And God, I hope you have a plan B, because this has taken them right up to the point of no return. And at that point, God calls out, Abraham, Abraham. And Abraham responds with, Hine, here I am. I'm here. And this time Abraham is responding from a place of deep suffering. This was very, very close to Abraham losing his son. But Abraham's being obedient and he's dedicated to his task. But what he sees before him is anguish and confusion. And I imagine that father-son embrace when Isaac got off the altar was a very long time. And Abraham was saying to God, here I am. And he was saying to his son, here I am. The major difference between these two stories, the story of Hagar and the story of Abraham and Isaac, is that one word, Hine. Hagar put her son under a bush and she walked away because she couldn't bear to see him die. Abraham, in the crunch time, he says to his son, here I am, son. I'm not going anywhere. I will never leave you. I will always be here. I am with you in this. I am totally present to you. When God calls our name, he's not looking for some weak response like, okay, I'm here. I'll think about obeying you if it suits me. God is looking for us to say, here I am, totally present to you. With great gusto and intentionality, knowing the meaning behind those words. God, here I am. And though the world may be in chaos and confusion, it's a choice. It really is a choice to trust God. Trust that He anchors us so that we can respond to whatever comes. And we can be ready and prepared using His strength and taking His courage and the fact that He is with us. So not only are we saying to God, here I am, God is saying to us, here I am to you. In the Torah, each time the word Hine is used, it signifies a turning point, a potentially life-changing moment requiring decision and commitment and action. It means that at that point, they're saying to God, I am absolutely focused on your desires for me. And I'm here and I'm waiting for your direction. It wasn't only Abraham who used this word. In the Bible, God called 6 different leaders who each responded with the same word. It was Abraham. God called Jacob when he was in a wrestle with God. And Jacob said, here I am. God called Moses from the burning bush. Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Hine, here I am. God called Samuel. And it took 3 times of Samuel to hear God's voice. And in the end, the 3rd time, Samuel said, Hine, here I am. God called Isaiah. Who will go? And Isaiah said, here I am, send me. And in the New Testament, God also called Ananias to a job that was really tough and dangerous. To go and meet with Paul, the guy that was killing Christians. And Ananias said, here I am, totally present to you. Yes, I will go. For all of us, in 2021, in the midst of this global pandemic, we have been experiencing hardship. Everybody on the planet is experiencing hardship right now. But the key for us all is this one word. Do we come to God with the commitment and the attitude, here I am, I'm totally present to you at your service. I'll do whatever you're calling me to do. Whatever doesn't make sense, God, I will trust you with it. Whatever the circumstances are, whatever the lockdown level is, whatever the colour of your suburb is it red, orange or yellow, we can say to God, here I am, I trust you, I am totally present to you, and I will do whatever you ask me to do, if it makes sense or not. Here I am, at your service. It's not just that God said it's not just that God called Abraham, Jacob, Samuel, Moses. God also calls us. He calls us by name. In Isaiah 43, verse 1, it says, I have called you by name. So put your name in there. I have called you, Sue, by name. And when God calls, what our response should be is, here I am, totally present to you at your service. The amazing thing is that it's not just our response to God. God responds to us that same way. This is something that I find fascinating. God also says, here I am, Sue, for you. In Isaiah 58:9, it tells us, then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. And you will cry out to him, and he will say, here I am. This, right now, is a time for courageous leadership. It's a time for us to bring peace into this world around us, wherever we go. It's a time for hopeful speech and for biblical wisdom. It's a time for courage-filled truth-telling. And sometimes it's actually a time to be quiet and just support those who are having a hard time, who've lost businesses, who've lost loved ones, who've lost jobs. And we need to say to them, Hine, here I am, totally present to you. So, are you in? Are you willing to say to God, here I am, for whatever it is? 3 times Abraham said that. Once came from, he's saying to God, I'm available. The second time came from a place of love to those who were hurting with questions. And the third time, just out of relief, Abraham is saying, I am totally here for you. So maybe the first time was something that you related to. Maybe this is the first time you have heard God calling your name. And I'm going to ask you, will you respond like Abraham did? And say to God, here I am, totally present to you, at your service. I don't know what you need me to do, but I'm in. I will follow you. I want to be on this life's journey with you, God. Here I am. Or maybe you related to the second one. Maybe you're hearing other people's voices. And right now in Phnom Penh, there are voices all around the city of people who are in desperate need. Maybe it's families and friends who are calling your name and they are struggling. They have questions. It's a hard time. Will you answer like Abraham did to Isaac that second time? And will you say to your family and friends and to those in need, here I am. I'm totally present to you, and how can I serve you? Or maybe you related to the third time that Abraham said Hine. Maybe you're a little disillusioned, and God's calling just seems to be too hard. It's not what you thought it would be. And you don't even know if God is who you always thought he was. Your plan A hasn't gone as you thought it would, but will you embrace plan B? Because what you might find is that your plan B was actually God's plan A all along. Will you choose to trust God with your story? And answer like Abraham did the third time. Here I am, totally present to you, at your service. As I close, you know the blessing song that was all going around the globe last year? It seems to have gone off the radar right now. And we need it now. And the same way we needed it last year, and we need it next year, and every year after that. And in that blessing song, it says, may his presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. There's nothing left. He is with you. He is with you. That is God saying to us, here I am. I'm totally present for you. That is our God. He is with us. He doesn't put us under a bush and walk away despite our sin and our grief. Whenever we call to him, he answers with, here I am. The story within the story for Abraham was that he needed to trust the story. He was being invited to trust God's promise, not just for himself, but also for his son and for future generations. And ultimately, that ends up being for us as well. For us to see the picture of God in Abraham's actions. We need to do the same. The story within our story is that we need to trust God with the story. The story right now is complicated and messy. But we are being invited into a deeper experience of God that's not just for us. It's for future generations and for this country, that they would see a picture of God in our actions and our attitudes. God is calling, just as he did for Hagar and for Abraham. But only Abraham answered with, here I am. We need to respond back with those same words. Whatever God is calling and whatever God is asking us to do, it might not make sense. But God is looking to us for that Hine response. Here I am, totally committed to you. I would say to you, trust God with your story. And know that in the depths of who you are, God is with you. He is for you. He is in you, and he will never ever leave. That is his covenant with us. There's one very sad time in the Bible where God called to Adam and Eve in the garden, and God called, "Where are you?" And Hine was the response that should have come back. When God said to Adam, "Where are you?" Adam should have been saying, "Here I am, totally committed, totally present for you." But unfortunately and sadly, that answer never came. My prayer is that whatever God is calling you to do, whatever the circumstance that you find yourself in, that our response back to him, mine included, is that one word, Hine. God, I am here for you. I am totally present for you. So may God bless you, and as the words of that song go, may his presence go before you and behind you and beside you and around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you. Hine. Here I am, is what we say to God. And when we look for him, he says, "Here I am," to us. It's a partnership. It's a covenant. And it's an incredible blessing that God would say that to us. He is totally present for us. And he wants for us to be totally present to him. So God bless you. Have a great week in lockdown, knowing that God is totally present for you. God bless.